Emily had always been a kind-hearted soul, but life hadn't been easy for her. Working as a waitress at a small diner in the heart of the city, she struggled to make ends meet. Her tips were her lifeline, the difference between paying her bills on time and falling behind. But Emily had a heart that was bigger than her wallet, and she was about to prove it in a way that would change not just her life, but the lives of many others. Hi everyone, welcome to Uncle Ben's Stories. Today, I'm excited to share a new story with you. One chilly November evening, as the diner was winding down for the night, a man walked in. He was disheveled, his clothes worn and tattered, and his eyes held a deep sadness that Emily couldn't ignore. He sat down at the counter, his hands trembling slightly as he picked up the menu. Emily approached him with a warm smile, even though she knew he likely couldn't afford much. "Good evening," she said softly. "What can I get for you tonight?" The man looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers for a moment before he looked down again. "Just a cup of coffee, please," he said quietly. Emily nodded and turned to get his coffee, but something in his eyes stayed with her. She couldn't shake the feeling that this man needed more than just a warm drink. As she poured the coffee, she made a decision. She would use her tips from that night to buy him a proper Thanksgiving dinner. When she returned with the coffee, she placed it gently in front of him. "Here you go," she said, her voice filled with kindness. "And don't worry about the cost. It's on me." The man looked up at her, surprise and gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Emily smiled and walked away, her heart feeling a little lighter. She spent the rest of her shift serving customers, but her mind kept drifting back to the man at the counter. As the night wore on, she collected her tips, each dollar feeling more precious than the last. When her shift finally ended, Emily counted her tips. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy a Thanksgiving dinner for the man. She quickly gathered her things and headed to the grocery store, her heart pounding with excitement and a touch of nervousness. At the store, she picked out all the essentials for a traditional Thanksgiving meal: a small turkey, potatoes, cranberry sauce, and even a pumpkin pie. She knew it was a lot, but she wanted to make this dinner special. As she checked out, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and joy. She was doing something good, something that mattered. With her groceries in hand, Emily returned to the diner. The man was still there, nursing his coffee, his eyes lost in thought. Emily approached him cautiously, her heart racing. "Sir," she said softly, "I have something for you." The man looked up at her, confusion in his eyes. Emily placed the bag of groceries on the counter in front of him. "It's a Thanksgiving dinner," she explained. "I hope you enjoy it." The man stared at the bag, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Why would you do this?" he asked, his voice trembling. Emily smiled, her eyes filling with tears. "Because everyone deserves a good meal on Thanksgiving," she said simply. The man looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You have no idea what this means to me." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with warmth. "You're welcome," she said. "Happy Thanksgiving." As Emily turned to leave, the man reached out and gently touched her arm. "Wait," he said. "There's something you should know." Emily turned back to him, her eyes filled with curiosity. The man took a deep breath, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and determination. "My name is John," he began. "I used to be a successful businessman. I had a beautiful home, a loving family, and more money than I knew what to do with. But then, everything changed." Emily listened intently, her heart aching for the man in front of her. "I lost my job, my home, and eventually, my family," John continued. "I hit rock bottom, and I've been struggling to find my way back ever since. But your kindness, it's reminded me that there's still good in the world. It's given me hope." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She had no idea that her small act of kindness would have such a profound impact. "I'm so sorry, John," she said softly, "but I'm glad I could help, even if it's just a little bit." John smiled, his eyes filled with tears. "It's more than a little bit," he said. "It's everything." As Emily left the diner that night, she felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. She had done something good, something that mattered. And she knew that she would never forget the look of gratitude in John's eyes. The next day, Emily returned to work, her heart still filled with warmth from the night before. But as she walked into the diner, she noticed something unusual. The diner was buzzing with excitement, and her coworkers were gathered around the counter, whispering and pointing at something. Emily approached them, her curiosity piqued. "What's going on?" she asked. Her coworkers turned to her, their eyes wide with excitement. "Emily, you won't believe it," one of them said. "That man you helped last night, he's not who we thought he was." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Her coworker handed her a newspaper, pointing to the front page. Emily's eyes scanned the headline, and her heart stopped. Local business tycoon John Thompson found alive after years of being missing. Emily's mind raced as she read the article. John Thompson, the man she had helped, was a renowned businessman who had disappeared years ago. He had been presumed dead, but now he was alive and well, thanks to her act of kindness. The article went on to describe how John had lost everything and ended up on the streets. But Emily's kindness had given him the hope and strength he needed to find his way back. He had reached out to his family and friends, and they had welcomed him back with open arms. Emily felt a mix of shock and joy. She had no idea that her small act of kindness would have such a profound impact. But as she read the article, she realized that it wasn't just about the Thanksgiving dinner. It was about the ripple effect of kindness, about how one small act could change the course of a life. In the days that followed, Emily's story spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up the story, and soon, the world knew about the waitress who had used her tips to buy a Thanksgiving dinner for a homeless man. People were touched by her kindness, and they reached out to her, offering their support and gratitude. Emily was overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support. She had never expected her act of kindness to have such a profound impact. But as she reflected on the events of that night, she realized that it wasn't just about the Thanksgiving dinner. It was about the power of kindness, about how one small act could change the course of a life. One evening, as Emily was getting ready to leave the diner, she noticed a familiar face walking in. It was John, but he looked different now. He was clean-shaven, his clothes were neat and pressed, and his eyes held a newfound spark of life. Emily's heart raced as she approached him, her eyes filled with tears. "John," she said softly, "it's so good to see you." John smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Emily, I can't thank you enough," he said. "Your kindness, it changed my life. It gave me the hope and strength I needed to find my way back." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. "I'm so glad I could help," she said, her voice trembling. John reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I want to do something for you," he said. "I want to give you the chance to follow your dreams, just like you gave me the chance to find my way back." Emily looked at the envelope, her eyes wide with surprise. "John, you don't have to do this," she said. John smiled, his eyes filled with determination. "I want to," he said. "Please take it." Emily took the envelope, her hands trembling. As she opened it, she gasped. Inside was a check, made out to her, for a substantial amount of money. It was more than she had ever seen in her life. "John, I can't accept this," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. John shook his head. "Please take it," he said. "Use it to follow your dreams, to build a better life for yourself. You deserve it." Emily felt tears stream down her face. She had never expected her act of kindness to lead to this. But as she looked into John's eyes, she saw the sincerity and gratitude in them. She knew that this was his way of saying thank you, of paying it forward. In the weeks that followed, Emily used the money to pursue her dreams. She enrolled in culinary school, determined to become a chef and open her own restaurant. She worked hard, driven by the knowledge that her act of kindness had changed not just John's life, but her own as well. As Emily's story continued to spread, It touched the hearts of people around the world. They were inspired by her kindness, by her selflessness, and by the ripple effect of her actions. They reached out to her, offering their support and encouragement, and Emily knew that she was not alone in her journey. One day, as Emily was walking home from culinary school, she noticed a familiar face sitting on a bench. It was John, but he looked different now. He was smiling, his eyes filled with peace and contentment. Emily approached him, her heart filled with warmth. "John," she said softly, "it's so good to see you." John looked up at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Emily, I can't thank you enough," he said. "Your kindness, it changed my life. It gave me the hope and strength I needed to find my way back." Emily smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so glad I could help," she said. John reached out and took her hand, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I want you to know that I'll never forget what you did for me," he said, "and I want to do something for you in return." Emily looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. "John, you've already done so much," she said. John shook his head. "I want to do more," he said. "I want to help you follow your dreams, just like you helped me find my way back." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She had never expected her act of kindness to lead to this. But as she looked into John's eyes, she saw the sincerity and gratitude in them. She knew that this was his way of saying thank you, of paying it forward. In the months that followed, Emily and John worked together to open a restaurant. They poured their hearts and souls into the venture, determined to create a place where people could come together and share in the joy of good food and good company. As the restaurant opened its doors, it was an instant success. People flocked to it, drawn by the story of the waitress who had used her tips to buy a Thanksgiving dinner for a homeless man, and the businessman who had found his way back thanks to her kindness. Emily and John stood at the entrance of the restaurant, their eyes filled with pride and gratitude. They had come a long way, and they knew that their journey was far from over. But as they looked out at the crowd of people, they knew that they had created something special, something that would touch the lives of many. In the end, it wasn't just about the Thanksgiving dinner, or the money, or the restaurant. It was about the power of kindness, about how one small act could change the course of a life. It was about the ripple effect of compassion, about how love and generosity could spread and grow, touching the hearts of people around the world. And as Emily and John stood there, surrounded by the warmth and joy of their new venture, they knew that their story was just beginning. They knew that they had a responsibility, a duty, to continue spreading kindness and compassion, to continue making the world a better place. And so they did. They continued to work together, to build their restaurant, to touch the lives of others, and to spread the message of kindness and compassion. And as they did, they knew that they were not alone. They knew that they were part of something bigger, something greater, something that would continue to grow and spread, touching the hearts of people around the world. Love this story? Tap that like button and subscribe to Uncle Ben's Stories for more. Let us know how this story made you feel with a single word in the comments.